situation was as follows, right? I have carried out inspection on BMW Z4. It's 10-year-old, I mean 12-year-old vehicle, 10 or 12, can't remember, but you're getting a point. And car, I was about to stop the inspection because the engine was too loud a bit on a cold start, and that audible continued, which I wasn't happy with, right? But I decided, look, I will just carry on. Also, I found some other issues like noise from steering column area, and it just had a snapped rear anti-roll bar link. It has a sensible service history, but it did had a lot of wear on the interior, etc. Right? So I explained everything to the customer as follows. Right? He reviewed the report. He reviewed the audio feedback on the report. He called me back. We had a discussion about exactly an hour. Right? So I explained the benefits, and I explained, I mean, not the benefits, I explained the negatives, right? And I explained a sensibility, right? Would he be willing to buy the car with the fault with the engine and then rebuild an engine? Because at that point, 60,000 miles or 70,000 miles or even 55,000 miles, doesn't matter. 12-year-old car, 12-year-old car, 10-year-old car, those engines at some point, you will need to do the chain. Once you will open up and look for the what is that knock from the cylinder head area, not the knock, the tapping, right? You opening can of worms, right? Once you will open that, then it will need the chain, the tensioners. You will drop the sump, have a look on a crankshaft main bearings, right? You just opening can of worms. Do you want that? No, 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 no. Yeah, I customer explains. Yeah, I do have a car, and the power steering doesn't work, and I'm driving around, so I need to buy one, sort of different vehicle. I will scrap my car, right? So it sounds like a sensible person, but it turns out the person just keeps going on and on and on, and he wants to convince himself to buy this sort of vehicle. He also inspected the insurance write-off where there's no value. I explained to him, right? There's no value in it, and he's been waiting. I think he got results back from that car. The repair was okay, right? However, I explained also you need to look at least on 10 cars yourself. You can find a better car. You can find a better Z4, right? With not a noisy engine on that 2 liter, right? Where there could be VANOS system where, right? Um, it's just in general, it's just unhealthy. It just sounds very unhealthy. Obviously, it will. You can drive, but do you want it, right? If you buy £10,500 car, right? They are between 10 and 12, right? And the customer was going on and texting me, and he wanted like, and it sounds like he wants to convince himself, right? Oh, could you provide more sort of repair costs to it? But I said it's going to cost you engine rebuild about 5 grand, And he tries to convince him. I said, look, I can't give you any more information what I already gave you in the report and in 1 hour consultation, right? It is a conflict of interest what you're asking me. I said, look, please send this report to your mechanic, third party, go through it, read it and see if it's a viable option for you. Where we talk, as I explained to you on the phone, buying £10,500 car and then spending 5 grand on engine rebuild is not a sensible idea. Extended warranty will only cover you for the sudden mechanical electrical breakdown. However, if you know there is a problem with the engine already on the time of the purchase, sensible person just don't buy the car. Extended warranty might reject the claim and you have to pay this money out of your pocket, right? As you never know how it goes with this extended warranties on an old car. So eventually he didn't pursue this sort of flimsy option, right? So again, it's an example of a people, right, who buy in the same day cars or the car on the same day. This gentleman, right, nearly bought a car where inspector told him it's not the car has a problem with the engine. You know, he nearly convinced himself buying this vehicle, right, is the fault because more likely he doesn't want to spend money more on inspection, right? He doesn't want to spend money or time on a hassle because it's hard to find a 12-year-old or 10-year-old vehicle in good condition. Obviously there are. I have done another two inspections for him, and those vehicles was obviously in much better condition, obviously with some other age related stuff, but however, overall they were good. And one 14-year-old car was literally above average, right? It was very good condition, very good. Z4 probably the best one I'd looked, but it was only problem was 14 years old, right? With no underside corrosion, anything. Like he had some obviously age-related issues on a clusters front deteriorated. So, I mean, with those issues you can live, you have, because you have a sensible understanding. You have to have a sensible understanding about used car. There will be things, the older the car, the more imperfection there will be. So that's why the point is you running around like headless chicken. Look on 14 cars, because if the car is 14 or 12 years old, you look on 12 cars to find the best looking car which you like, with minimum stuff, and then you do the inspection just in case there is chain rattles, engine rattle, smoke from the engine, rattle noises, something snapped on a suspension, car goes in a limp mode under load, any fault codes which potentially can be at the time of the purchase, right? So this just shows example, if the person wouldn't do the inspection, he would just bought a car regardless, because he nearly bought a faulty car even with inspection, because he was trying to convince himself it's kind of not as a big problem. He found a sort of cheaper parts, but he doesn't understand when he goes to the garage. Yes, you can look at the cheapest thing what you found, but then you will need to do this. Then the garage said, we're not going to put the engine back together because it needs this, it needs this, it needs this, So I said, look, the engine rebuild will be £5,000, move how you want, that's reality. So check what you buy, trust me. £200 inspection for the price of the battery is cheaper than buying a problems. Why all the consumers are happy to overpay 20% on a finance, right? But they can't afford inspection. And then they buy shit cars and then they moan, right? You're just so happy for 4 years overpay so much money on a finance, right? But you can't afford and don't want to do an inspection. But then you complain, you're so smart, or every single consumer law, right? And then you're smarter than a judge, right? So just don't be the person like that. Be sensible, Don't jump on a gun. Consumer Rights Act will be pain in the ass when things go wrong, because sellers will stonewall you to death, right? And it's gonna take you a year or two, right? You can play the game. Sellers they're not stupid. They can play the game if they want to, especially if they're dealing with unrealistic customer, where most of the people kind of are, especially people who buy and order the cars, the older cars, sort of 70, 80,000 miles, 100,000 mile cars, or even above. They're just unrealistic sometimes, Unfortunately, sorry, but that's reality. We deal with them too, You don't escape.